Welcome, everyone. My name is Hallie. I'm a member of the Foundation Learning team, and we're excited to have you here tonight to talk about the ACT Science section and how to master that. We have one of our fantastic consultants and tutors with us today, and I'll have her introduce herself in just a second, but she'll walk us through everything that you need to know about the ACT Science section and how to master it. For those of you that don't know, Foundation Learning is a tutoring company, and we help students through their standardized tests, as well as tutoring for any other subjects that you might find yourself struggling with or need a little bit of extra help on. All right, so Maisha, can you introduce yourself for us today, and then we'll dive right into the ACT Science section.
Yes, thanks, Hallie. Hi, everyone. My name is Maisha. I have been with the team for a little over a year now. I've worked with students, particularly working on science research proposals. And a little bit of background about me. I did my undergrad from Columbia University in neuroscience and behavior. And I went on to do my PhD in genetics from Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I'm now in New York City working as a scientist in biotech. So I'm very happy to be here to talk to everyone. I have a serious passion about mentoring and consulting students in different parts of their journey towards getting closer to achieving their dreams, whether it be the college of their dreams or the grad school of their dreams, etc. So very happy to chat with you today about the science section, which is particularly relevant to me.
Fantastic. I'm sure we'll learn a lot. And then I didn't mention this before, but we are recording this, and we'll be sending out a copy of this webinar to everyone who's joined. So you'll be able to review it as needed, rewatch, and just don't need to worry about taking notes. And also, we do have a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, pop those in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will definitely get to those at the end. All right, so let's get started and talk about an overview of the ACT Science section. What is it?
Right. So I guess most of you here today are familiar with the ACT, which is one of the standardized exams, which is not the SAT, which is also offered when applying to colleges. It is an optional test depending on which college you apply to. Now, the science section of the ACT in particular is a 40-minute section that has 35 questions. The goal is to evaluate a student's analytical, evaluative, reasoning, and problem-solving skills. And these questions are usually contextualized in scientific scenarios. So these real-world scenarios will be either about biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, etc. It can be anything in the realm of science. It might sound daunting since there are so many different subjects that might be touched upon, but do keep in mind that there's no need for advanced knowledge in these subjects. It's more of a very brief overview, and it's more about understanding how to answer questions about science rather than knowing the nitty-gritty details of a particular scientific field. And the last point is kind of really what's important to remember, that it's kind of this section is very similar to the reading section. It emphasizes understanding the concepts rather than the specifics behind any particular section.
Great. I remember when I took it, it was very much focused on using the scientific method and process rather than trivia questions on all things science. So it's very doable. Even if you don't love science, you can do really well in this section.
For sure. And we'll try to give you some tips on how you can kind of get geared up to tackle these questions.
Great. All right. So you've done any research into the ACT, you know how the scoring works, but we'll talk about it again here just so you know how you'll be graded.
Right, so the number 36 might sound familiar. That is the highest composite score that you can achieve on the ACT. But the way the composite score is determined is by taking the average of all the section scores. So first, the number of questions that you successfully answer in each section is recorded. Do keep in mind that there's no penalty for guessing. So even if you do get a question wrong, it won't deduct the total number of points that you get. You only get points for questions you did answer correctly. So these raw scores that they tally will then get converted into a scaled score. The exam is kind of curved based on the other people who are taking the exam in the same sitting as you. And by averaging all these and getting a scaled score, you end up with a composite score between 1 and 36. And they do round these numbers depending on what your scores were. So you'll get an individual score. It won't be like, 34.5 or anything.
All right, key content areas and question types.
Yeah, so we mentioned before that the science section covers, not one particular field of science, but biology, chemistry, astronomy, and physics. But within this section, there are 4 categories that kind of cover all those subjects or individual subjects. And these are data, scientific investigation, evaluation of models, inferences, and experimental results. So we'll go kind of more into this, and it's important to know what kind of questions you'll be asked, because there are different ways to answer and address each of these. Okay, so here we're showing you what the percentages of each of these 3 sections that I mentioned earlier, or just now. The most number of questions, around 40 to 50%, fall within the category of interpreting data. Means manipulating and analyzing scientific data that will be shown in tables, graphs, or diagrams. Next is scientific investigation, which covers around 20 to 30% of the questions. And this is more about understanding experimental tools, procedures, and design, learning or understanding hypothesis-driven work, understanding the objective behind the experiment or question. And finally, evaluation of models, inferences, and experimental results, which cover 25 to 35% of this section. And this category involves judging the validity of scientific information and coming to conclusions based on the information that you're presented with. So as you can see here, these different sections will require different skills. So it's important to kind of practice questions that cover all these different kinds of questions that will be posed.
Great. All right, so now let's talk about the different types of science passages that you'll encounter.
Right, so as we mentioned earlier, the science question is kind of similar to the reading section in terms of there will be passages you will be primarily understanding how to answer the question by reading what exactly is asked of you. It's basically understanding the context of the question. So there are 3 formats. One is research summary. In this kind of question, you'll be given a series of experiments and the results of the experiments. This will require you to understand what the purpose of the experiment was, how it was done, and kind of pick out what the findings of the experiment was. Next, there can be data representation questions. And here, this question will provide you information through the charts, graphs, and tables. And here you're kind of analyzing data, interpreting the data. And finally, you have conflicting viewpoints. So this is a little different in that the question will present multiple theories or explanations for a particular scientific phenomenon that they'll be talking about. So it's up to you to analyze and kind of assess the different viewpoints that are presented. So as you can see, there's a lot of overlap between the types of questions, the types of passages, the types of context clues, but there's also some differences that are nice to know about so that you're more well prepared.
All right, let's go over some strategies for success.
Great, so if we kind of tie it back to the last slide, in terms of data representation, what are things you can do to succeed in answering these questions? Well, one important note to keep in mind is make sure you can immediately identify certain telling parts of the question, which will include variables, units, or trends that you notice in graphs or tables. So this is all about data representation, right? It's what you can visually see in front of you. Now, for the research summary type passages, it is great if you take time to understand, again, the purpose, method, and results of the experiment, and kind of think about it as if you're a little scientist yourself, you know, setting up an experiment, understanding why it was done, you know, how could this experiment be different or the same? How could it be done better? And for the conflicting viewpoints, that's kind of a given that you have to make sure you know how to compare or analyze different, or maybe, yeah, alternative theories for what you're presented with.
All right, what are some tips for maximizing your score?
So the tips we just talked about were more about, you know, strategies to tackle the particular scientific questions. Now, these tips are a little more general. It will not only help with the science section, but with other questions in the exam as well. So number one is mark up the passage. I know that now it will be in a digital format, but you will still be able to use tools to highlight, underline, whatever you think is important in the question. This will help you kind of hone in on what they're asking in particular and make sure that you're not skipping over any important pieces of any important clues. Definitely refer back to the passage. It's totally fine to have to reread after you go down and see what the question is. There's no reason to make yourself remember or memorize what you just read in the passage. Just make sure you can jump up and down between the passage and the question to really understand what you're reading and what they're asking you. And super duper important is to practice timing. When you're taking your practice exams, of course, in the beginning, it's okay to practice and practice answering questions with however much time you need. But as time goes along, closer to exam day, it would be really beneficial to time yourself when you are practicing. Here we're saying allocate about 5 minutes per passage to ensure you complete the section within the allotted time. So, you know, of course, there'll be a time crunch. There will be various questions. So you don't want to spend too much time, but you also don't want to speed through it and miss anything in particular. So this takes a little bit of time to kind of it takes practice to kind of find that comfortable medium between spending enough time and not spending enough time on each question.
Practice tests are so important for that reason. You don't want to be taking the test on test day for the first time without knowing how long questions generally take you.
Absolutely. You know, having that time pressure on you is crucial because you will feel that pressure on the day, and you don't want that to be a new feeling.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about some more test taking tips. And these are definitely specific to the science section, but also will help you through the entire exam as well.
Exactly. So it will definitely be helpful to know some common terms. Some terms we are throwing in here are independent variable, dependent variable, constant, direct and indirect relationships. These are different terms that are very common in the ACT science question. So when you are taking a practice exam, make sure you kind of cover questions that include all of these terms. And definitely have a strategy for yourself. You know, the strategy will differ from student to student. But you know, ask yourself key questions about the experiments and the data presented in the passage to guide your analysis and interpretation. And you know, some people might have the strategy of reading through the whole paragraph first and then looking at the question. Some people prefer to take a quick peek at the question first so that they know what to kind of pull out of the paragraph and then read through the whole thing. Really depends on your individual strategy and decision and what works best for you. But it is nice to have a strategy so that you can kind of go through the exam quicker, more quickly, and kind of feel more prepared, as if you know what's coming and you know how to tackle it. You feel more confident.
All right, and then test day tips.
Yes, test day tips. You know, there are a lot of tips when it comes to, you know, feeling prepared, you know, sleeping enough, eating enough, making sure you're not cramming. But when it comes to the actual exam itself, it's definitely helpful, again, to like mark up parts of the question. In particular, detailed words. Make sure that you notice if a question is negating something, if it says not or does not. You know, you can circle particular numbers in a table. You know, it's totally fine to mark things up. It'll help you stay focused. It'll help you stay calm. It'll help you feel more involved. And managing your time effectively is, of course, crucial. You know, although you are not penalized for answering a question wrong, it only helps you to get through as many questions, ideally all the questions, and at least give it a try. This only increases your probability of getting a better score. And definitely keep an eye on the clock. Even if you're a pro and have, you know, practiced multiple times and can feel exactly how much time you have left, definitely keep an eye on the clock, because you know, the day of the test things will be different because you know that this is the real deal. But also keep in mind that you have prepared a lot, prepared so much, and that you will be able to get through and succeed. And that you're ready with some sort of game plan. And yeah, it's important to try to stay calm and confident.
Fantastic. So we just went through a lot of information pretty quickly. I'm sure There's some questions either about the ACT as a whole or science. If you have any, pop those into the Q&A box and we will get those answered for you. Maisha, do you have anything else that you tell your students or any specific advice specific to the science section that you have for everyone here today?
Sure. I definitely want to say, if you see some sort of term, some scientific term that you are completely unfamiliar with, I don't even know an example. Let's say they're talking about the Andromeda galaxy, and you really don't know much about it. Don't let it get to you. Don't get hung up on a word or a phrase that you don't recognize, because at the end of the day, you'll see that the question is not asking about that. If it helps, you can even plug that term in with something that you're familiar with. Let's say instead of Andromeda galaxy, let's just say Pluto, and use that to help you guide the context towards answering the question. So don't feel apprehensive towards the science section because you think you might not be right enough. I think we stressed this a couple times, that it's definitely more of a question or a section to determine your analysis skills, your reading comprehension, more than how much science do you know.
That's a really great tip. I think it can be so jarring when you go to your first science passage and it's on a topic you have no idea what it is, or you're seeing words that you don't know. But it's where it's time to take a step back and take a deep breath and really read the full passage, and know that the likelihood of you being asked about the particular facts about the particular passage that aren't in the text, or the definition of this word that you don't know, are pretty unlikely in this scenario. And it's more about they're just giving you context for the question to help you to answer it. They're giving you a scenario, but your questions generally are not going to be about the topic specifically. All right. We'll start wrapping up if no one has any questions, but if you do, feel free to pop those in the box. We'll give it another few minutes. And just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Maisha, it was great to see you and have you here to talk about the science section of the ACT. And for those of you with us tonight, you'll receive an email with a recording of this webinar, so you can go back and refer to it as you are studying for the science section. And definitely keep an eye out on our website for upcoming webinars. We have quite a few coming up, so you can go sign up for free for those and view past webinars on our website as well. And reach out to us if you need some help studying or have any questions. We did just get a question. Do we have these for each section of the ACT? I think we have some upcoming about some other ACT sections, and we also have a few on the ACT as a whole that dives into each section. All right.
We also have some that are comparing the SAT versus the ACT. Those are helpful too.
Absolutely. And SAT specific ones as well, especially the digital SAT coming up. We did get one question about some of the terms you should be familiar with. I think we can go back to that slide. I
know there's a lot of text in these slides, but
and also it's not an exhaustive list either. I'm sure there are definitely others that you'll come across as well.
Right, so the ones we just highlighted here were independent and dependent variables, constants, direct and indirect relationships.
Yeah.
Definitely keep an eye out for these kinds of practice questions.
Yeah. And we also have resources on our website that you can download for free that go in depth on some of these terms. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you so much for joining us. And Maisha, thank you so much again for being here. It was great. Great to have you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.